So, what did you have for breakfast today?
I didn't have anything.
No coffee, no tea, no water?
No. I did. No. My mind is just. I had avocado on toast.
Smash avo.
Yeah, and
some
chorizo, and yeah, and that was it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Now, you're a bona fide Melbourne hipster now.
No, I'm not.
Hey there, how you doing? My name is Jordan Michaelides and I co-founded Neuralle with my partner Lauren. We built the Uncommon podcast to interview unique individuals and investigate interesting topics, therefore allowing our community to build the quote-unquote uncommon sense crucial to increasing their intelligence. And our investigations and interviews are largely inspired by people like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's business partner, and particularly in Charlie Munger, who always really emphasized that worldly wisdom is incredibly important, not just for entrepreneurs and investors, but for your own growth as an individual. And he always used certain quotes, and the one that I love the most is Abraham Maslow's quote, which is, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I think by saying that, what he's trying to emphasize is that if you only have a certain skill set or knowledge base, then all you will see is that cognitive bias related to that skill set or knowledge base. And therefore, you need to broaden that. So we are really trying to investigate and uncover new guests and new topics for our community. If you want to learn more, you can head to neuralle.com/podcast. I hope you enjoy. This podcast has been an experiment and we need your feedback as a subscriber. So leave us a review, make your way to learn more about the competition and prizes that we have going. That is at neuralle.com/podcast, Neuralle. Some of the prizes include an Apple Watch 2 for all you high performers out there, a Kindle Paperwhite for you book nerds, an Amazon gift card for everyone else. You can also sign up to our, weekly brain food, which is the Monday Morsels at neuralle.com/signup. Make sure you check it out. So in this episode, we have Tenda McFly, aka Tenda McFly. He's a poet and a rapper and a very good friend of mine. Our interview was quite conversational. For those who have been listening so far to the other episodes, you have noticed, the changes in structure, and I guess that's the purpose over the life of this podcast, is to find different structures that work for different people. And our conversation was broad-ranging on how poetry and rap has largely influenced his life, and it even improved him as a business person because he is, focused on that field as well. We think that linguistics is a key area of cognitive science that we hope to cover more in future. I think that Tenda's episode in particular will whet your appetite because it starts to cover this field through more of a cultural medium through rap and poetry. And we include topics like how his passion for music and poetry began, combating dark periods in writing and performing, including bombing on stage, how poetry and rap lend themselves to business and vice versa, the game of rap itself, advice to first-time rappers or spoken word poets, his current playlist, and at the very end we concluded a sample of his remix of Coin Laundry by Lisa Mitchell, and I think you'll really enjoy that. So thanks for listening. If you want to check out the show notes, just head to neuralle.com/podcast and you'll see Tenda there in the index. I hope you enjoy. All right, we're live. Tenda McFly, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you for having me.
no problem. You've been a busy guy, so I'm glad you could join. Maybe let's start with a little bio, which I like to ask everyone. So maybe just tell us a bit your real name. You know, what are you known for? What do you do? Just stuff like that, so people can get to know who you are.
Yeah, sure. So my full name is Tenda John Chimbari.
Johnny boy.
Yeah, you can say that if you want. Yeah, I had someone try to call me Jono, and that didn't quite work out. I don't think I feel or look like a Jono. But yeah, no, that's my full name. I also go by Tenda McFly.
Okay.
And as Tenda McFly, I'm a spoken word poet, and I am a rapper as well.
Okay. What is spoken word poetry? Because I had no idea when you first told me.
It's poetry that's written with the intention of it being performed. At least that's how I would describe it. I'm sure there's other people that have their own definitions, and because you'll find that there are other people who are more sort of like classically inclined in terms of like how they view poetry, and then there's also other people who got into poetry because of other inspirations, like perhaps maybe they're into like hip hop music, or they just I guess like that genre or like that way of being able to orate yourself. But yeah, so that's essentially what spoken word poetry is. But I think that definition will depend on who you're speaking to.
Yeah. Now, when you do spoken word poetry, the way that you create, do you think it's different to how someone would create standard poetry? You know, just written poetry that they would publish. Or does it depend on the style?
I think it depends on the style and the person as well, because I think even someone who's writing like, you know, written poetry, it's the way that they might write might be different to someone else,
Okay.
Who's also writing it. So for me to say that the way that I would write it would be different, it might be. I don't know.
Okay.
But I can tell you that for me, like in my head, when I'm thinking about whether this is going to be like a spoken word piece or it's going to be just something that I'm just writing for the sake of writing, I think about how it's going to sound. And so if I'm rhyming words together, is it rhythmic enough? Do I need to like chop it up so that it's not so rhythmic? Do I need to have like a line which stands out, and it stands out because it doesn't rhyme with anything else? So it can become quite complex, and because poetry doesn't have like, you can't say that something isn't. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the definition for
It's
it is
subjective.
very fluid.
Yeah.
All you have to do to really make it a poem is go to, like, you know, one of these venues and be like, I'm doing a poem.
Okay.
And then people would be like, okay. But really, you could just be like talking to the crowd, and like,
Right.
you know, whatever they respond, they'll be like, oh, that's like, you know, a form of poetry in itself.
Interesting.
It makes it problematic for someone seeking a definition, but I think that's what it is.
Okay. Now, when it comes to rap,
Yeah.
do you feel that you have a particular style? Because, you know, like let's say if you compare a 50 Cent to a Kanye, like they are quite different.
Yeah, yeah. No.
So how would you sort of explain to a newbie your sort of style of rap? Because I feel like it has that sort of electronic influence.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you then also have to do is, I don't know, I hate doing this, but like sometimes the best way to describe what like your music might sound like is also like just talking about like, you know, who your influences are, or perhaps what you might sound similar to,
Yeah.
but not necessarily the same. I think being inspired by something is quite different to directly copying something. So, but for me, like, I would say that my music is like a mixture or like an amalgamation of like influences from like indie pop, the indie pop genre, and also just like rap, but like in its like most lyrical form. And then at the same time, I also try not to put myself in a box and not recognize the fact that good songs, or the songs that often make it on like, you know, the top 20s and what have you, are also songs that, although they might seem silly, like, you know, it takes some sort of an art to be able to, like, you know, produce something that a lot of people are going to be singing repeatedly because it's catchy or because of it's whatever.
Yeah.
So I try and capture little bits of all of that.
Okay.
And as far as like, I guess, who my inspirations are, like I like say Vampire Weekend. I love the fact that they use like these African samples, and that obviously resonates well with me.
Yeah.
So like those are the types of beats that I'll usually pick.
Kanye, obviously.
Yeah, Kanye, huge influence, and also like a bunch of like new rappers that are coming out now, and I think that are really paving the way for what rap might sound like in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Like Chance the Rapper, Smino, and a whole bunch of other people coming from Chicago.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because you mentioned like sort of I wouldn't call them modern rock, like electronic rock band.
Yeah.
There's an interesting quote, or it just reminds me of this quote that Childish Gambino has. And it's something like, I'm the only black guy at a something concert. What's that concert?
I don't know what
Yeah,
concert he's
but you know what
about.
you know what it is.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but I know that that's something that a Childish Gambino might say.
But it's so interesting how that form of rap is really becoming, like, I think about like The Weeknd.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, it's that, I feel like this elite form of music, my favorite form is now, you know, it's that sort of mesh of, like
borrowing from different genres sort
yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, but when you also look at it, I think it's something that's also always been done. Like if you look at Nelly, when he was still like, you know, popping, he had like an album that he put out. I forget the name of it, but like it was like one CD was rap and the other one was like country, and and it's just like really odd. Or if you look at like Kanye with like 808s and Heartbreak, and what he sort of did there, or if you look at Run DMC, going all the way back, like, you know, the obvious rock influences, or even like Beastie Boys and like their sound and what it sounded like. And I think it also goes to speak to the fact that rap music or rappers in general can tend to be quite complex in terms of like what influences them. They might not always listen to rap music. They might have other inspirations that are outside of the genre.
Okay. There's a whole slew of questions around that I want to come to.
Yeah, sure.
But I might get, I guess, the bio stuff out of the way. So
yeah, definitely.
But I'm interested to know, how did you get into music? Like for me, it was the first sort of thoughts of enjoying music and like having that sort of social capital for it was a photo of my great grandpa with a violin that my grandma used to show me. So like for me, it was like, oh, she likes it, so maybe I'll try it out. And And yeah, from there I sort of got playing different instruments. Like I think the first one was a keyboard.
Yeah.
What was it for you? What's sort of your first earliest memory of like where you really thought, wow, this music thing is pretty awesome?
I don't know if I can answer that specific question, like in terms of what got me doing it. I know what got me to continue it. And the reason why I say that is probably like when I was like 10 or 11, like I just did it. Like I don't know why I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
And I took a whole bunch of like raps that I liked from different rappers.
Okay.
And well, it was mostly just one rapper who was my favorite at the time, and
Who was that?
P. Diddy. You might have known him as Puff Daddy back then. Took a whole bunch of raps and like just different lines that I would take, and then I also took Missy as well, who's someone else who else I liked, and Lil Kim.
Okay.
So I took a few Missy lines, some Lil Kim lines, and then like made a verse. And then like I would rap that to like my friends and like even my family and stuff. And like, you know, I just they liked it. And like, you know, and then I just sort of like continued doing that. And then there was like a big sort of, I guess, break between me being, I think, 12 to like 13, 14, where I really didn't, up until I like started listening to Eminem and 50 Cent.
Okay.
And at that point, I would just like memorize Eminem raps and 50 Cent raps. And it's funny what rap music can do. Like it can take you out of a situation and make you feel like you are that person. So like when you hear like a rapper, like, you know, bragging about things that they have, like the women that they have, or like, I feel like the reason why some of that music is really successful is because of the fact that it allows someone to be someone who they're not, like momentarily. And I think that's what I enjoyed about it.
Right. So do you feel that it becomes like an outlet for people?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, as listeners, definitely.
Like you sort of embody the lyrics and you sort of like imagine. Yeah. No, like, say if I have like a night out or something, like sometimes I'm tempted to like tweet like, you know, sunglasses and Advil, like, because that's like a Kanye line, like, you know what I mean? And I feel like our friend MJ would do that.
Definitely. But like, it's crazy because it's been woven into like, I guess, different parts of life that you wouldn't even realize, just even through like advertising and what have you, like the fact that you call like jewelry like bling bling, and the fact that like Lil Wayne made that up, like, you know, and just didn't have like the brains at the time to
trademark it.
Yeah, to trademark it. But
he's a smart guy though, isn't he?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he has a psychology degree and some other things. But I don't know, like, next question.
Good. Now, I mean, so when you were cutting up, let's say, those different lyrics from different songs, and then you were making your own, why were you doing that? Is it because you just felt that you liked specific things and you wanted it to be your own?
I think I was learning to be a writer. Okay. I think I was learning to find out like what sounded good and what didn't.
Yeah. Because it sort of reminds me, like when you make like a mood board.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you're trying to, like, if you're doing a certain thing, and you're creating like this visual. It sort of sounds like that, but with lyrics.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like, because for me, it was more just about having something that I could also then produce and show people and be like, hey, I also did this. But even though it wasn't me, like, I didn't care. I was like 12, 13, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I was just for the most part having fun. But what's probably more interesting as well is that when I did start writing my own lyrics, they were also an embodiment of everything else that I had done previously by like taking all these raps and putting them together, because I would then write these lyrics and it was as though they were written by a gangster. And I was not.
Yeah.
I was not. I've never been one, and I've never really done anything remotely.
That's so interesting. Maybe that's like a good public service announcement for parents. If your teenage son comes home and starts rapping gangster lyrics,
Yeah.
it's not because he thinks he's a gangster. It's just because he's trying to find his own way.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think because rap gets a lot of like critiques as well, like with people saying that like these lyrics are feeding into like what our children end up doing.
Yeah,
like
they say the fucking same thing about
Yeah,
computer games.
yeah, and when you really think about it, sometimes it is ridiculous, because how can like someone's lyrics that they've like come up with and as a piece of art, which is what you should view it as, not as an autobiographical thing, unless if they say that that's what it is. How can you take that and put it aside a movie where something is blowing up, people are getting stabbed, and say that like for some reason this is worse?
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of when like Fox News credit all this outrage about Common going to see President Obama.
Yeah.
And because he had a lyric in a song that they had interpreted.
Yeah, but they would
was supporting
easily
a cop.
They would easily get like a movie director to come. Like, what I mean?
Yeah, it's so funny that.
Yeah.
I think people maybe just have a certain bias and they just want outrage.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Or a reason for something.
Yeah, and like, because the other thing as well is that I think there was like a couple of cases like in the US where they were there was a murder, someone had been killed, and they were trying to like piece together what had happened. Now this one particular rapper had in his lyrics mentioned like stuff about like murdering people, not specifically about like this issue specifically, but he had mentioned stuff about murdering people, and that was his own artistic interpretation, or at least he said his own artistic interpretation of what was going on within his neighborhood, etc., etc.
Right.
And it doesn't even matter what it was about. It's a fucking song. Like,
Yeah. That's so true.
yeah, but they started like scrutinizing his lyrics and using that almost as evidence. And then when you look at the fact that they wouldn't do the same for like country music, and because country music can be quite violent, or like metal, and then you start having like these I guess interpretations of what the music actually means, and whether this is art or this is like someone like putting out a declarative statement to say that I'm a killer, and like it's not right.
I completely agree. It's it's just outrage, I think.
Yeah.
When it comes to staying on, I guess, your childhood, and I know I've actually hit you with this question before because I was trying to try it out on people.
Yeah.
But if there's a lesson that your parents have taught you, whether directly or indirectly, now it could be from one or the other, it doesn't really have to, doesn't matter. Something that you think that has stuck with you over your life that you maybe even practice yourself now?
I don't know. I would probably say that just they're very hard workers, both of my parents. And it's something that is evident in both of their respective journeys. And I won't talk too much about like what they did, but like my father, he like had to travel like very long distances to get to his school. It was a boarding school, so he didn't have to do this repeatedly, but he had to travel very long distances walking with like a metal trunk.
Okay.
It had wheels, obviously, but at the same time, this is like in the rural areas, and like everything around there, like, you know, the roads are like pretty much like sand, like it's not.
Now, for those listening at home, you're from Zimbabwe, so this is rural Zimbabwe.
Yeah, rural Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And at the same time, like, there were people trying to recruit young men to fight as rebels.
Okay.
For the current government at the time, which wasn't necessarily inviting to black people.
Okay.
And their inspirations and things that they wanted to do. And yeah, so he did that. And at the same time, he's then been able to use that as like the foundation for him moving on to further education. And now he's like a professor at a university in South Africa and travels the world quite a bit, but is always someone who works hard. He wakes up every day at like 3 a.m. Or 3:30 a.m. And that's when he starts his like work day. And which is crazy when you like really think about it, because I couldn't imagine myself doing that, but it's so ingrained in him, and it's part of his routine that that's what he'll do. And on the other hand, like my mum, she was the first woman in Southern Africa to be a to be like a forestry manager of like this really large area. I don't know what the particular term was, but it was a huge deal. It was in the paper and everything else. And we were quite proud of her for that. And she moved to Australia and had to do a master's here, then moved to New Zealand and had to pretty much sort of like start her career again. And when the forestry industry wasn't doing so well, then moved into nursing, and then decided to move back to Australia. And she's doing quite well for herself as a nurse, and she's doing like another master's program now. So like education is like a big thing, but like for me, it's not the fact that I'm seeing that they've done like all of these qualifications and stuff. It's the fact that I've seen that they've hit roadblocks,
right,
and they've continued to jump over those roadblocks and continue going, which is probably like the biggest driver for me.
Yeah. So it sort of seems like a combination of both hard work and improving.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Precisely.
Do you have any sort of core principles in life, like things that help you make decisions? These could just be, you know, your own that you built over time.
I don't know. I've never really had that question asked to me before, but so I have to think about it. But when I have to, I guess it's mostly about whether it's going to make me happy or not.
Okay.
And mostly sort of ends at that, whether that's going to make me happy and whether that's going to make the people that are closest to me happy as well. That's probably what I think about. And I don't...
It's a good policy to have.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't really think about much else, really. Like, and I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I should. And then sometimes I'm conflicted when I don't.
Yeah. I mean, humans normally just have heuristics that they come back to. And the more you simplify it, the more you can generalize from it as well.
Yeah, precisely.
So, but if you have more and more and more, it can make it actually too hard to make decisions. So sometimes, is it going to make me happy is a good way to be.
What are yours?
It's sort of that one is sort of similar. I think it's like I actually have like 4 or 5 written down, but I've actually blanked on it. But one of them is to value time over money. Mm-hmm. The other one is to value experiences. So is it going to be a good experience, or could it lead to a good experience? Mm-hmm. So that's 2. Number 3 is something along the lines of will it improve or make the relationships close to me more enjoyable? So that's sort of a form of happiness, you know, my partner, friends and family and so on. The fourth and the fifth one is more around career. I think it's something along the lines of, you know, to be focusing on something bigger as opposed to money, because sometimes which is hard to do because you always fall into the track of focusing on money.
Yeah.
And the fifth one, which is again related to career, is work with people that you trust, I guess.
Yeah.
That, you know, that you wouldn't... Like, because originally I had that... I don't know if I told you about it. I had that 3D printing startup, and, you know, one or two of the people I didn't really trust. And that was something that taught me that. So, yeah, trust the people that you're around when you're working with them.
Yeah, no, that's a definite good one to have. Yeah, because otherwise you're always sort of second guessing whether what their intentions are.
Are they telling the truth? Are they doing the right thing? Can you, you know, the hardest thing in business, right, is that you'd know this through doing psychology, is that you can only manage like 4 to 5 people maximum. So you have to be able to trust those key people around you to go and do what you need them to do. And if they don't do it, how can you trust them?
Yeah, no, precisely.
Are there any habits that you notice that you have during the day during the week? Some people meditate. Some people always ensure they get X amount of sleep. Some people never have breakfast.
I'm a very disorganized person. Probably not the answer you're looking for, but I'll set an alarm before I go to bed.
Okay.
I might not wake up when it rings. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll be on time to work, or like just on time. But I tend not to have like very many set, like rigid things. I don't always eat breakfast. I don't eat when I'm stressed.
Okay. Why is that?
I just don't have the appetite.
Okay.
Yeah, like I just literally don't have the appetite. If I have like, say, a job interview or something, and it's somehow been put at like 4 p.m., it's likely that I won't eat up until...
Really?
5:30.
That's so interesting, because like I find that when I'm stressed, I eat.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I like literally can't, and that probably explains like my slender physique.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. But no, it's something that I'm like consciously sort of trying to change. Not the stressing part, but just like eating better to account for the fact that there are times that I won't eat because I'm like thinking about something.
Is there a particular reason why you don't like structure? Because you were mentioning before.
It's not that I don't like structure. I love structure. It's just that it's not something that I'm able to follow always.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you were saying before we started this about how when you write, it's sort of like you get like a trigger, you know, and that sort of works better for you as opposed to, say, you write every Monday or every Friday.
Yeah. So I tend not to write music or poetry because I need to write it. I write it because like it's yearning to be written, or like I feel something that like I need to put it on paper. Okay. Like I don't sit down and say that this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I do that just because sometimes there's deadlines that you want to meet. But on most occasions, I've just found that it's very difficult for me to produce something that I'm proud enough to actually release to people.
Yeah.
Sometimes I actually just have like a blank piece of paper and I'm just sitting there for like an hour and a half, and I start to think that I'm shit and I don't know what I'm doing. And then sometimes it just hits me and I'm like, oh, like this is really good. And then most of these things, they just start like writing themselves down, and then I start to feel really good. I'm like, yeah, there's no one who can do it better than me. Like, and because you kind of have to have that mentality as a rapper, maybe not so much a poet.
Yeah.
But you can, but it makes it problematic when you go to, because they don't adhere to the same mentality, I guess.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that before. So one of the next sort of questions I had was around what have been your darkest periods. Now, perhaps around writing and poetry and rapping, when you get those moments when you think, "Oh, I'm shit," how do you deal with it? Do you have any sort of methods? Like, do you talk to yourself in a certain way mentally? Like, and have you found a way to fend it off?
Yeah, I think what you'll find is like this running theme of like just winging it in everything that I'm saying. But I like, say for example, like there was this gig that I did not too long ago. I won't give you the details because I don't want you to look it up. But it was like one of my first gigs that I had done in a while, because it was like this long period of time where I wasn't really doing like any music and I wasn't doing like any poetry or anything like that. And I got up on stage, like the first song went really well. And I was like, yeah, I still got it. And then like the second, third, I just like, I just froze. Yeah, I just froze on stage. And like for people who know me, it's also something that kind of conflicts with what you know of me. Okay. But I froze on stage and like I didn't know what like the next lyrics were. And for me, if I screw up, I have to start all the way from the start. And it was just like this awkward like situation for me.
Wow.
Where I was just like, I know that I'm actually better than this, but like, what do I do? But anyway.
So what did you do? What did you do?
Like in the moment or like afterwards?
What in the moment and afterwards?
In the moment, I tried to carry on. Like, that's also hard because because what happens is that my mind will start thinking I screwed up at this part of the song because I didn't remember the lyrics. For what comes next. And it's not because my mind doesn't actually have those lyrics in my mind. It's the fact that now, the second time that I'm going through this song and I'm starting again, I'm like, hold up, let's start again. And I'm starting again on the song. I am 80% likely to stop at this very same spot because I'm thinking those same thoughts.
Really?
So the only way to get past that is to rehearse more and more and more and more. So that's probably something that I'll do.
So it becomes sort of second nature.
So it becomes second nature, but it's not about it becoming second nature because when I got home and I did it, like I could do the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. So it's about it becoming second nature and then some, like, so that like I know it well enough that I don't get distracted when I'm like on stage by like someone wearing like bright colored shoes or something like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Little thing that puts you off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Ruins your train of thought.
Yeah, or so that I don't have those thoughts about like me screwing up at this part because I've screwed up on it before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So, because one of the questions I had was around bombing on stage.
Yeah.
So it's obviously happened.
Yeah.
Happens to everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you, like, do you do anything before you perform to sort of, you know, get yourself into a flow state when you're performing so that that doesn't happen?
Maybe I should.
I take that as a no then.
Like I said, no structure. Can we just like title this podcast that? Like,
Definitely.
How not to be an artist. No, I don't have like any sort of like routine that I will follow. And to be honest, like I'm actually like saying it like legitimately, like maybe I should. And I've realized that like one of the things that I think will always keep me at the top of my game is like taking people's advices over things that like, you know, that they've done that have then made them able to overcome obstacles that have like, you know, presented themselves. And yeah, like, I mean, I've read things that have told me that, like, you know, if you have like a routine or something like that, or like using like things like mindfulness so that you're not thinking about like other things that might be going on. Yeah, those things might be helpful. They're just not things that I've done in the past. And maybe that's like part of like my own self-improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so in terms of, I mean, maybe we've already sort of covered this, but is there's no sort of way that a song is born? There's no sort of process. It's just when something comes to you, you just get it out on paper, and then you start practicing it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, and it's not paper. I've never written anything
Typed up
on paper. Yeah, I like type it up, and that's quite interesting. But anyway, yeah. So like, I might have like an idea for like a couple lines,
okay,
and then I just expand on that.
Have you noticed anything? I'm interested to know if you've noticed anything that sort of triggers it. Is it mainly other music? Is it mainly other sounds?
I think it's...
Or just you daydreaming?
I think it'd probably be me just thinking about what would sound like nice, like what would sound really good. And then once I have like that one line, it sort of forms the foundation for the rest of the song. Like, I don't know, but for me, like when I listen to like rap music, I think like the most like important lines within it are like usually like the very start and like the end.
Okay.
So the hardest thing is thinking about how you're gonna start a song. Like, to give you an example of like a good start, like it was all good just a week ago, like, you know, like stuff like that, like, because then it kind of like paints the image for like how the rest of the verse might actually go.
Okay.
And yeah, like, and it just sounds like a certain way enough for it gives someone like enough for them to want to listen to more. And that's probably the hardest part. So once I have that, everything else starts to come to me a lot easier.
So you find that you sort of have like a pillar line.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know. Is that like a common thing for people writing most rap or poetry?
Most people writing rap and poetry are probably organized. Like, I actually have difficulty, like, I wouldn't say it's a common thing because some people can freestyle rap. I can't.
Yeah.
Some people can write in a room full of people. I find it very difficult to. I'm someone who wants like an entire space to myself, and it's taken me like quite a lot of time for me to even get comfortable with like writing lyrics with like my wife, my new wife, like, you know, in the room.
So maybe you're just a bit more measured.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. It's not I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that, yeah, there's going to be people who'll be able to do a certain style and others that won't.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm interested to know. So I was writing here. Are there any sort of compliments that poetry and rap give each other? And you know, your background, like most people won't know this now, but your background is in psychology and business. Do you see like either side transferring to the other, like your knowledge of psychology and maybe how humans could think, and how that would transfer to writing music, and then maybe even how writing music would affect the business side of your life?
So as far as, I'll probably start with like writing, and writing music and poetry and how that might influence like other aspects. But firstly, I'll probably like address like one thing. Like for me, I think it's very important for people, because for me, like people come up and they'll be like, hey, I saw your gig at such and such place, or you were awesome on stage and stuff. Like, how often do you do this? They'll ask me questions about like, oh, wow, that's really impressive. Like, you should definitely do more. And then once they get to know a little bit more about me, and then they learn that like, I don't just like, do music and poetry. I also, am quite, I guess, passionate about my career and where I want to head to in the future. And like, it then becomes a thing. They're like, why don't you like focus on like, music more? Like, you're really, really good at it. And then in the reverse, some people will go, wow, like imagine if you like, put all your thoughts and energy into this, but they don't really realize like how those like, two things that may seem quite distinct from each other actually play like a role within each other. So for example, like with writing and how that influences my like, I guess, my career ambitions and everything else, it's given me the confidence to speak in front of people. It's made me more articulate. It's made me someone who's also, I guess, aware of what sounds good and what doesn't. Because if you're speaking, like, in the way that you use language, for me, that's like quite important. Like, and you might not necessarily sort of like realize it, but like say you're in like a business meeting and you're talking to like, some objective, sometimes it might actually sound really good for you to say something poetically, like in a way that like, they can't necessarily refuse what you're saying, or in a way that, they're just a little bit like, more in tune to the fact that this is a very professional person that's presented themselves to us, and they're submitting this to us, and they've presented it in a package that's appealing. And that's how that influences that. And then my actual, like whenever I go for interviews, like, people ask you like, what else do you like to do, so that it builds like a full picture of who the person is. And when I mention like, some of the other things that I've done through like, music and stuff, like it shows them that I'm someone who can network. I'm also someone who, like, can present, shows them that like, I've been able to do like quite a few things with like a whole bunch of reputable like organizations. And that in itself, might be an indication of how I might do within a particular, like professional domain.
Yeah.
And
so they really sort of complement each other very well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the other way around is less so, but it's still there. Like just having a better understanding of like the actual world and like living in the actual world. Like, I go to work, I sleep when my alarm, like, when my alarm is going off.
So you can relate.
Yeah. So I have experiences that I can then write about like within my music and stuff. And even like studying, like say something like psychology, like there's like a couple times where like I'll just like have a line which references something that I might have learned in psychology. And that in itself might be like the start of like a song where I'm talking about something that's like in that sort of direction. So yeah, that's pretty much like, I guess, the relationship.
I think it's really fascinating because obviously the stuff that we focus on is like cognitive science and psychology and linguistics, like particularly language. It's an area that people, I don't know. It's not like they forget it, but they forget don't understand how powerful it can be. There's a brilliant quote from that recent movie called The Arrival, I think it was, and there is a quote in linguistics that something along the lines that language is the first weapon used in a conflict, which I found quite interesting. So it just emphasizes the power of understanding and being able to manipulate language well.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, and even just in like just real life and like understanding when to be diplomatic and when not to be, and so
we were speaking about this week, but I want to talk about the game.
The game, the rapper, or
no, just the game of
the
rapping.
Okay, yeah.
So you spoke about your inspiration. So you sort of take from people like Kanye, but also Vampire Weekend and a whole multitude. You had that post on Facebook about what was it? Can you tell us what it was? It was like a rating.
It was just like this. I was going to say Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not, but it's just like a hierarchy thing. Showing like who the elite rappers were, and I think the other category that they had there as well was at the very bottom they had trash, and then they had elite but past their prime.
Okay.
And they also had underrated, and then they also had like overrated. And yeah, it was just really, really interesting to see like which rappers like landed in which categories. I found that list like on Hip Hop DX.
Okay.
And I just like reposted it because I knew that
it would spark some outrage.
Yeah, it would spark some outrage, and I just find it very interesting, like how people get so incensed
about a certain rapper.
Yeah.
Well, like what is it that makes someone elite? Do you think? Like when you think of successful in this game, who first comes to mind? And like, I'm trying to understand why is it that people look at certain people and go, "Wow, they've really, they've done something."
I don't know. Like, sure, I can answer that question like from a personal level, but it's also. But I feel like I should also comment on the fact that the reason why I find like just this topic interesting is because rap music is in a genre like of its own in terms of like how people perceive it and how people perceive like other rappers that they might not like. It's very competitive.
Yeah.
Everyone is competing against each other. You're not a rapper if you don't think you're the best rapper in the world.
Yeah, it's sort of like the fight game.
Yeah.
Like with MMA or boxing or whatever.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Like you have to actually have that mentality. Otherwise you're going to get like chewed up. Yeah. Because so for example, like Jay-Z, and I'm probably deviating from your question.
No, it's fine. Deviate away.
Jay-Z in the book that he wrote, which starts with a D, but I forget what it's called. But in that,
right, we can reference it later.
Yeah, in that book, he mentions that, like he's trying to describe like what makes a great rapper amongst rappers that think that they're all the best rappers in the world. And he was saying that what makes a great rapper is someone who's able to, who's in a position where they're able to say that they're the best rapper ever, but say it in a way that hasn't been said before. So usually when people use those lines, they'll have like some sort of like, metaphor attached to it or something clever or witty that they want to also put within that statement.
Right.
And then it's up to the crowd to then judge whether like, this is indeed the best rapper ever that they're listening to, or they think that someone else had a better line. But so when I look at things like these lists, it makes me happy, but then it also makes me sad for the people that really, really get into it and they're like, nah. It makes me sad because they don't see that or like respect other people's opinions enough to realize that that's how the game has actually been set up. Like, you know, that it's supposed to be competitive. And if you're thinking like thinking about it just at a higher level, you'd be like, this discussion really doesn't matter because your opinion is going to be different to my own.
Okay.
But at the same time, I enjoy being in those discussions.
Yeah.
But I know this in the back of my head, like, this doesn't really matter, but this is fun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like me dissing like another rapper that someone else might like. And I'll be like, nah, man, like that guy's trash. Like, and that in itself can be like an hour-long conversation with someone.
No, but it's good because it starts the conversation, doesn't it?
That's right.
And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. It just sucks when you end up being wrong about something.
Have you noticed anything about the game that hasn't changed over over the time that you've been into it since, say, you were 12, 13? Like, what are some constants that you notice?
I would say that the constants that I notice is that, like, obviously the competition is always going to be there.
Okay.
I'd be disappointed if it somehow disappeared.
So people should get used to it if...
Yeah, people should get used to rappers bragging about themselves, and it's not just them bragging about themselves. It's, in a way, it also inspires people to be something greater. Like, that's why, like, what's that? Michael Phelps, like, you know, like he listens to like rap music before he goes on to like swim. And I think he's like listening to like Lil Wayne before. Like, it just like puts you in a zone where you think you're the best thing on the face of the planet. Yeah. So
you said it really eloquently once when we were at lunch about Kanye.
Yeah.
He has a certain quote about being his number one fan.
I don't know. Like, I forget what that conversation was, but he does often talk about, like, you know, him and where he's at and how he just believes that, like, you know, he is, like, you know, the best thing. And, like, you know, he's very confident. And in that confidence, he sort of, like, people can mistake that or like I mean, don't get me wrong, it is arrogant, so I shouldn't say mistake, but people can mistake that to be like a negative attribute, and it shouldn't be, because if you feel that you're good at something, why should you act as though you're not? If you feel that you're the best in the world at something, why should you, like, you know, act as though you're not? If someone else disagrees, that is an internal issue, not your issue. Yeah. They should carry themselves as they believe that they are. And I don't know, it's just something that I've also then adopted, not to the same extent, because people don't describe me as being like I guess a dickhead. Yeah. But it's something that I'm very aware of. Like, if I think that I am good at something, in my head, I want to be telling myself that I am the best at this. Okay. So there's certain parts of me that are sometimes tempted to, like, when I'm like watching a show or something like that, or when I see like some rappers, like, you know, I'm from Melbourne or like from Brisbane or whatever, like on stage, and I'm like, yeah, it was all right. Like, if you ask me about my opinion about someone, like, you know, like, who is also a rapper, like, sometimes it may seem like I'm hating them, but that's just because I'm comparing them to myself. Yeah.
So always competitive, always motivating.
Yeah, and there's another point that I was probably going to add to that. So that, and there's also always like a divide between those who are established, or those who are older, and those who are younger.
Okay.
So, for example, like trap music is very popular right now.
Right.
The Futures, the designers as well. They're like very popular in terms of like how they're doing in terms of record sales, like in just the social capital that they have as well.
Who is that? Sorry.
Future and designer. So like, you know that I Got Bras in Atlanta. Yeah, like that song, and like Future. I'm not even gonna mention the song, but anyway, like not to say that I'm not like a fan. Like I listen to like every, like I like listening to like trap music. I like listening to like hardcore hip hop. I like listening to some of the new stuff that's coming out, like listening to like mixture of rap and R&B. So it doesn't really matter to me like in that regard. But one thing that you'll notice is that there is a divide between hip hop heads,
okay,
which are usually people who are older. Yeah. And listen to hip-hop music and probably listen to it throughout the golden era, which is like the 1990s. And their perception of like, you know, what the younger people are doing.
Okay.
And for me, I feel like I'm somewhat caught in the middle, like being someone who loves words. Like words were probably more appreciated in the 1990s sort of era, and even like the early 2000s, like with the Kanye West and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like with trap music, it's also about like the beat and yeah, how like, you know, that sort of like plays into that. And I think you'll always find that there's always going to be like these hip hop purists and people pushing the genre forward, and somewhere in between is like the best music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who do you think then is sort of there right now? Who's sort of got that perfect crossover of the young and the old?
Chance the Rapper, Kanye West.
Chance and Kanye.
Yeah. Okay. Don't get me wrong, there's also like some other people who are very good within like either camp. Like, so say for example, like with the old hip hop heads, they would be like, you know, very favorable to like Kendrick Lamar and
Drake.
Oh no, not Drake. Drake would probably be in the middle area, like with the Kanye.
Yeah.
And, but they'd be more favorable to like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, and just like people who are just doing it sort of like, I don't want to say by the book because these are like unique individuals as well, but their style is more in line with what a hip hop purist might be like. That's right. Dope, and that's to the core of that. It goes to their way, the way that they write their lyrics, and like the emotion that comes out of it, and also how intricate that can be in terms of like the technicality. Okay. Whereas on the other side, it's less about that. But in a way, like that's like you can't disregard it because you think that, like, you know, because they're not using like these big words, they're somehow not as talented as the Kendrick Lamars and the J. Coles. Yeah. And that's because they're able to capture the attention of a young audience, and just them being able to do that is enough of like influence. Like, you know, they have like this influence in terms of like people who are going to listen to them, et cetera, et cetera. And to be able to produce the music that they produce, it also takes a skill. Like, you can't just be like, okay, if this is so easy, like, you know, like, you know, then you come and do it. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So
have you noticed any commonalities amongst those that are sort of in that crossroad? You know, the Kanyes and Chance the Rapper. What have you noticed about what makes them so unique that and pushing the sort of the envelope or the genre forward?
I think it's you'll even notice it, like, say, like, the Kanyes and the Chance the Rappers and even, like, the Drakes, they will work with people from both sides. And when they work with people from both sides, they compete very well with people from both sides. Like, they would still sound like the better person on the song. Because, like, with rap, like I said, it's very competitive. So if there's two rappers on a song, you're comparing them. You're like, that person had the better verse. Okay. So they're able to live and coexist in both worlds.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting into sort of our more quicker questions now.
Yeah, sure.
If you were speaking to someone who was starting to approach rap for the first time, maybe even starting out, what sort of advice would you give them? You know, would you push them to start listening to these artists, reading these publications? Is there anything that you'd sort of...
I don't know. I'd just push them to write,
Okay.
and write again. And I just say that because I know for a fact, like, that my process is not something that someone else might be able to follow, or it's not something that someone else might be able to even gauge from this conversation, because it may sound as though there isn't one.
But it seems like there is.
Yeah.
You sort of work off triggers as opposed to writing X day.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I just encourage them to write and then try it on a beat. Listen to the beat whilst they're writing, and then I'd encourage them to listen, because for me, like, lyrics will probably always be more important than anything else.
Okay.
So I would probably encourage them to listen to their favorite rappers and find out exactly what makes them, like, you know, who they are. Learn about the different styles and techniques that people are trying out. Like, experiment with different, like, flows, and just try a whole bunch of different things, and then at the end of it, you'll realize that you have, like, a toolbox of things that you can call, like, at any time, and you'll be like, okay, so this part of the song kind of needs, like, some sort of switch up, so I want to be, like, rhyming, like, every second word or some shit. Okay. Like, or I want it to sound as though, like, everything rhymes, or like, or perhaps maybe you want it to sound as though, like, you know, you want it to convey a particular sound. And lastly, I'd also say that sometimes you might forget that. Actually, 2 more points. Sometimes you might forget that, like, with rap, like, although you're not a singer, you can use your voice. So the way that you might say something is, it can be perceived quite differently if you use your voice in a very different way. So I'm playing around with you sounding deeper in certain parts, and then not sounding so deep in other parts. And lastly, as a final sort of point, I would say that, yeah, just like have fun with it, and because otherwise, like, there's no real
What's
point.
the point? Yeah. Is there any particular audio software that you use? Because you're a Surface Pro guy, aren't you?
We're not getting into that. Yeah. To be honest, I don't use anything too complex. Like, when I'm just, like, working by myself at home, I just use, like, Acid Pro. But there's a lot of different programs and stuff that you can use, and I wouldn't worry too much about the type of program if you're just starting out. It's just more about you being able to hear yourself and what you sound like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get into these quick questions now. Mm-hmm. What do people never ask you that you wish they did?
What do people never ask me then? I wish they did. I don't know. People ask me a lot of things. I realize it's actually a really difficult question.
It is, yeah.
Can I ask you that question?
Because we've had this conversation at work about people coming up and saying that they're always asking, what is it? Like, how was your weekend? How was your evening? All that shit. So I definitely wish that they didn't ask me that.
Yeah, it's easier to think of things that. Yeah.
What do you wish people didn't ask you?
Yeah.
So maybe if I was thinking conversely, maybe if they asked me what was annoying me today.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. And then you could tell them that question you asked me before.
So fuck off.
Yeah, I don't know. Further to that, maybe my one could be ask me questions that they mean.
Okay.
Yeah, so not necessarily like
Fluff.
Yeah, exactly. But they just mean to know the answer. They're not asking me a question because they have a follow-on thing that they want to talk about.
They're just doing social fluffing.
Yeah.
That's a good point. What are you most proud of thus far in life?
I don't know. I'd say that I'm most proud of, and it's gonna sound super vague, but like there's just been a lot of things that have happened. But I'm most proud of my achievements in both like music and even like professionally to date, because of the fact that there've been a lot of like different little like adversities that I've like had to face. Like there was a point where I was studying and had to pay for my own university fees because I didn't have like access to student loans or anything like that. Yeah. So that meant that I had to like work like pretty much full time.
Yeah, fuck. Because you're from New Zealand, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like stuff like that, and realizing that like despite all of those difficulties and despite not having like all of the luxuries or perhaps all of the resources that someone else might have, I was able to
get it done.
Yeah, to get it done. And I was also able to do a whole range of other things that are not even related to a profession. Yeah, and that I'm quite proud of. So
that's a good thing to be proud of.
Yeah.
If you could have a billboard anywhere in the world, where would it be and what would it say?
These are questions that I'm not very good at.
Introspective ones.
Okay.
Right, if you want to skip it, we got heaps, so we can always come back to it or just forget it.
I feel like I'm going to be skipping a lot of them. Okay, skip.
Do you identify with any historical figures at all? Or do you look up to any historical figures that sort of not with us now? Like for me, I never, like I didn't used to, but there's maybe two or three people that I really like. Richard Feynman, because he taught me how to... he taught me sort of the excitement of learning.
Yeah.
And Benjamin Franklin. These are all through biographies because he taught me how to have a laugh career-wise and make a mockery out of people.
Yeah. For me, it'd like mostly be... Like, I wouldn't call them historical figures because, like, most of, like, the people that I do look up to are, like, rappers. And it's funny because I get, like, meaning out of, like... I'll get, like, some meaning out of, like, a rap song that, like, no one else would get.
Yeah.
Just because that's how I come to view the world.
Okay.
But outside of that, like, I guess... Like, say, like, people like Nelson Mandela and what he's done for, like, black people. And that sort of, like, gives me a drive to make sure that in whatever thing that I'm doing, like, you know, I am still recognizing that, like, you know, I am part of a much larger system.
Okay.
Without getting too much into it.
Yeah. Any best purchases under $200 in the last couple of years?
In the last couple of years. How about, like,
Could be
under
any.
$200 a month? My BlackBerry.
Just for all those listening at home, yes, Tenda still uses a BlackBerry. What is it about it that you love about it?
I love the fact that I don't have to learn something new.
Okay.
That doesn't go for everything. Like, there's just certain things, like my phone, like I view it as a phone. I don't view it as a toy, as some people like, you know, have as phones.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, you know, like the interface and stuff like that has always been the same. And then like the keyboard has always been really, really good. And it's super easy with like emails and like, for my unorganized life, keeping me organized.
Hey, that's a good thing to have. Mm-hmm. Any favorite books that you've read over the years? You mentioned the Jay-Z one before.
Yeah. So that's like a favorite.
Like if you had to gift it to someone, let's say.
If I had to gift it to someone. I'm trying to think. You see, here's the thing about me. Like, I don't read a lot of books.
Okay.
But like one book that I would give to someone, and people find that interesting because like they'll be like, I heard like your pieces on et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, and then we'll start talking and they realize I don't actually read things. I find that I need to make time to read. Mm-hmm. And that's a concept that I have a very difficult time accepting when there's so many good TV shows.
Yeah.
But Fountainhead.
Okay. What's that about?
By I don't know how to say her name, A.Y.N. Rand.
Ayn Rand.
Yeah, Ayn Rand, yeah.
Okay.
That one is probably one that I would give to someone because it pretty much embodies like I think better articulately puts like those arguments that I might have about like, you know, wanting to be your own, like, you know, your own person despite what other people might think. Sort of like when I use like Kanye as an example, I should really be using Fountainhead because that'd be more accepted. Yeah. But like essentially there's like these two characters within the book. Both like architects, one which followed like a very like straight and narrow path,
right,
and the other whose path was never really to do what people said unless if he really like thoroughly believed in it, and that also caused him to be I guess shunned and cast out. So like the buildings that he would build were things that like, you know, didn't seem to be appealing within that space and time because he wasn't building like, you know, these I guess these buildings with like these gargoyles or whatever, like that sort of style of building. I don't know too much about like that, but it was more the message that I was able to draw from that. Yeah. The fact that he was able to build his own company by doing things that he genuinely believed were the correct way of doing it. Right. I'm not doing it any favors. Yeah. So read like some sort of a blurb about it. And the way that it's written is just beautiful. Yeah. Like she was a very good writer. I know Lauren's read is it Atlas Shrugged? Yeah. So that's another one as well. I haven't read that yet.
So I didn't see you as an Ayn Rand. Damn. Yeah. What do you call that style of writing? I've forgotten what it is.
I don't know, but like
it's not altruism, is it? No.
Yeah, like for me, I don't normally read like fiction or anything like that. If anything, I'd be mostly reading like nonfiction, so like people's like biographies and stuff like that. That's what I'm more inclined to read. But then again, if there's like Vikings or there's Game of Thrones, I'm probably going to be watching that.
Well, are there any I don't know, are there any favorite TV series that you've seen over the years? Documentaries? Keep in mind, a lot of people have Netflix. So.
Yeah. The Wire, Black Mirror. What else do I like The Walking Dead as well.
Okay.
And yeah, just pretty much anything that has like that sort of like flair to it, like allows you to like get caught into it and you can't like not listen to it anymore, or you can't not watch it anymore because like, you know, it leaves it like with a cliffhanger and like it's not just like a shitty one.
Yeah,
you actually care what happens to the characters and they kill them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're well known for your what are they, Game of Thrones dinner nights.
Yes. No, definitely.
Okay. I asked MJ this one. I'm interested to see what you say. Mm-hmm. Do you have any favorite? I asked him what are the 5 favorite non-musical sounds. Do you have any favorite non-musical sounds?
So just like sounds in general.
Yeah, could be anything.
Okay. Let's try it out. I guess birds.
Okay.
Like not when they're like have a distinctly like annoying voice or like annoying sound like a kookaburra or something. Just like when they're like quietly chirping.
Okay.
Yeah. Within reason. I like the sound of cars.
Okay.
Like none in particular. I just like, you know, I just like the sound of cars.
Okay.
I don't know if I can come up with 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think what makes it tough is that like I haven't had the time to like think and compare things, which is also what makes me a shitty freestyler. Because I think too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like I said, that can make you very measured.
Yeah, exactly. So if someone asks me a question, I'll like actually think of it like a legit answer. Yeah.
Is there anything that you believe in that nearly no one agrees with you on? That's something that you know is true? This question's formulated in a few ways. It's what is something you believe in that nearly no one agrees with you on? What important truth do very few people agree with you on? What insight about life seems obvious to you but not to others?
I guess like I can probably answer it in the way that I think the insight to me that is not always so obvious to others is the one about like happiness and like finding like true joy in things. Like I feel like sometimes people just do things for the sake of doing them to appease other people, and it's not necessarily because of what their ambitions are or what they want to do or what they want to be. And I feel like being happy and really prioritizing that is the most important thing in the world.
It's good.
Yeah.
To finish it off, what music are you currently listening to on your playlist?
My playlist. At the moment, I'm listening to J. Cole's new album. I'm listening to The Weeknd's new album. I'm also listening to Kid Cudi's new album, particularly the song Surfin'. I think that's a hit.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably it.
Okay. Well, Tenda, thank you so much. If people were to find you on Twitter, Facebook, all the other social networks, how would they do so?
The handle is Tenda Can Fly, so TENDA Can Fly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All this stuff we'll link. We'll do show notes and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
When I was 17, I thought money grew on trees. I had some pocket money, but I didn't have these bills. In fact, I was naive, but I knew I had to stop and smell the roses and their seeds. Dear. You see, I happen to believe the best things in life are free. But would that still be if I had money to my knees, an apartment overseas, and a trust fund for my seed? If things were free, would that still be if I had a Beamer in Berlin, a Mercedes in Morocco, and a Lexus in Lesotho? If things were free, would we live out all our dreams? Because clothes are always clean, so you wouldn't need the laundry.
Before you head off, thank you for making it this far. It's been a real treat doing this. Like I said, make sure you head to neuralle.com/podcast to learn about our prizes. Sign up to our weekly brain food called the Monday Morsels at neuralle.com/sign-up. That is neuralle.com/sign-up. Leave us a review. It's really important to us that we can get quality reviews and build feedback as to whether to continue with this. Check us out on Facebook at Neuralle, Neuralle. Until next time, speak soon.